Well, welcome to episode 52 of Talking Small Press Comics with Steve Keeter.
Hi.
And me, Larned Justin. And today is a very special show. With us today is the creator of The Improbable Girl and The Wonder Kitty, Steve Carrales. And welcome to the show,
No, I'm
Steve.
Steve. No, I'm Steve. He's Joe.
He's Joe.
Joe Ellie
Steve
Carrales.
is down there, and Joe's over there. So it's Joe Carrales.
I got a bunch of them here.
There you go. Look at all those. Look at all those.
Some of these are UFO zines. Right in the middle there, somewhere in the middle, there's a UFO symbol where Joe hopped on board the United Nations Organization.
I see the UFO.
Yeah. But
my friend Steve, ever the huckster for UFO.
Yeah.
Right.
we got a bunch of questions for you, Joe.
All right.
All kinds of questions. I hope you're ready.
You got questions? I got answers.
All right.
You
want me to go? You want me to go first, Steve?
You can if you want.
All right. Here's one. I got to read these because I can't remember them. You said that around 1988 you discovered that you could make comics. Hmm? How did you discover that? How did that happen?
It's kind of a long story. It's going to be a lot of long stories here.
That's okay. We know, Joe. We know they're going to be long.
Go back to the days of yesteryear.
Right.
Well, we will kind of go back. When I was around that age, in the late 80s, I was around 9, 10 years old or so. And my grandparents had a ranch out 5 miles west of town, and we would go there and kind of look through all the stuff. My grandpa, he had been a TV repairman, and he had been sort of like a junk man. Actually, he was the guru of the city dump. So we had all this stuff there, cool stuff, weird stuff, old radios, vacuum tubes, all kinds of great stuff. But I found my father's schoolwork. You know, I guess you graduate from school, you throw your satchel there, and so I opened it up and I found some old, I guess they're kind of like folders and notebooks, kind of manila folders, very, very brown, very old school, very 60s, 70s. And I started going through them, and I noticed something in there called the People's Journal. And they were all kind of out of order, right? So I put them in order, and I found out what the People's Journal was. The People's Journal was an assignment that his teacher, some English teacher, had given them, where they're supposed to write a journal entry at the beginning of every class. And as a sort of rejection of that, he had created what he called the People's Journal. It's like this revolutionary, I'm not going to do this. And so
this precedes this, right? The New People's Journal.
The New People's
he
Journal
kept the name. Yeah.
Continues the tradition of the original People's Journal. So the original entries were like, this is a stupid assignment. I don't know what Claude wants us to do that and all this other stuff. But then eventually it started to be like poems and stuff. And then all of a sudden, like on the 5th or 6th page, it suddenly became like drawings. We started drawing pictures of his associates. He started drawing pictures of school activities, and then had little kind of did you know that this, and that, like Ripley's Believe It or Not sort of things. He'd make fun of his friends. The Sasquatch lives still. Here he is. And that kind of stuff. Little drawings, and a lot of early, like he was a fan of Marvel, so you'd have like Hercules and and all that stuff all around there. And I was all, this is cool stuff. And I would ask him about it, and he would never let on. And that's sort of a thing. My dad never like associated with me when it came to like making comics, or he would draw stuff for me, and he drew this like Vince Lombardi, Super Bowl trophy stuff and all this stuff, and it was real great. But he never really like came out for it, and I started to draw comics. And I said, you know what, I want to do that. I want to be like my dad.
Your dad was before his time. I mean, he would have fit right in.
Yeah, that's really back there a ways.
Yes. Don't think that anything other than the fact that it should be him sitting here. he would love you guys. That becomes a sort of bittersweet part of it, because there's a bit of a story there, and we'll get to that as we go. But so I decided that I was gonna to be like my dad, and I was gonna lampoon my friends and all this, and I was gonna make them comic books. So we'd be at school, in the 5th, 6th grade, and they're drawing all this lowrider magazine stuff, and and I said, no, I can draw better. I can draw better than that. I feel like this gangster, because they were drawing the lowrider symbol. It's a guy with a hat and a little beard. So I'll draw a monster. But I drew like this, 1920 style thing, and they go, oh, that's pretty good. And at the time, those TV shows like G.I. Joe had become a TV show, and the Transformers and all that. And so I like drawing like army stuff. So I said, I'm gonna make this like series, and I go, you guys, I'm gonna make some comic books. I'll give one to you, my friend Albert, and then I'll make a couple of others in case any of you other guys want. So I would do 3 at the same time, because I didn't have a copy.
When you draw them all, you just draw them.
Yeah, every panel it was
draw the same thing 3 times.
My grandpa was a janitor. Other grandpa was a janitor at the school. I come from junk people. My grandpa was a custodian over at high school, and every now and then he'd bring a ream of 8.5 by 11 paper for some copy machine. Well, we never got the copy machine, but I would have the 3 laid
There you go. Yeah, you got the paper.
So okay, we're gonna draw this, and this, and so I would give these out, and I was like, I can make comics. This would be cool. And this was when I didn't know very much about it. Now we did have some comics. We always had like gold key comics left over from the last generation, the Star Trek comics. Star Trek comics became like a big deal. But I got some of them here. I'll show you some of the stuff. And we did have some of the other stuff, but we never really. We had some superhero stuff. It was kind of all old. But the thing that really was there were Mad magazines and Crash magazines. And so I kind of got into that, and I was like, okay, these this is all pretty cool. They're doing movies, and they're drawing people that look like the actual people.
I think that influenced a lot of us. Mad magazine and Crack magazine and those things.
Yeah, everything from Spy versus Spy to the Mort Drucker's movie parodies and satires and all that. I really kind of went into that. But so I created. See, you're a kid, and you do strange things as a kid, right? So I'm
still doing strange things as adults.
Yeah,
but
some people would say that. Yeah.
And so of the strange things I did, I'm going to make my own like team, right? Like the G.I. Joe has their team. We used to watch like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and all this other stuff that would come out, on Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm gonna make a team like that, but I need to give it a name. So I said, I know that there's such a thing as the FBI, but that's been done to death. So I'm gonna call it the FDI, Federal Detectives and Inspectors. But it was really like a military organization, and so that would be what the comics were about. And so they would be, this was heavily influenced by the 1980s G.I. Joe show, where they had like these 5-part long, week-long, 30 minutes a day installments. And so, I like that. On Monday, they're doing this. On Tuesday, by Wednesday, they're losing. And then on Thursday, they turn the tide. And Friday, they just... So I started writing stories like that. One of them was called Lost on the Trap Planet. And one of them was called The Druid's Secret. And they were kind of like epic things. Now, the other thing that I was doing was I was pretending that people were reading these. Like I had readership. Got to fake it to be amazing.
Right.
That's the same readership I have. Pretend readership. Same thing.
I did have one reader, Albert Rios, who will probably see this. He was like very interested in all this stuff, and he kept the only surviving element from that time, which is...
Oh, there it is.
I've seen that cover. I've seen that cover because you sent me a photocopy. I think it appeared in the UFO newsletter not too long ago.
I appreciate it. I reference this a lot because this is the only thing that survives. Now, I made I don't know how many comics, but they didn't survive the decade.
Yeah.
And so, but what this was a zine before I knew what a zine was.
Yeah.
Because it has, for example, it has scenes from the comics in there. And it has some caption, and it has like, we found the enemy island or something like that. as if people had read these comics and this was like some sort of annual and who's who.
Unbelievable. That's very cool.
So like here is the original Druid Secret was kind of like done. It was actually much longer, but these are just like key scenes from it.
And you did these like elementary school or high school?
This was already heading towards middle school.
Middle school?
That particular stuff. I was in fifth.
But did you ever see small press comics? Did you know that other people were doing that?
I did not. See, the thing is, over here in South Texas, you kind of live in isolation. In fact, it wasn't until very recently that I discovered small press and independent.
That's what I was wondering.
And
that was one of the things I was wondering.
I fell in love with it because I'll kind of go over into like the part with my dad. So what I didn't know, my dad passed away in about 2014 on June 6th. And I didn't realize that as a young man, he had an ambition to become a comic book artist. He was an excellent artist. Like I said, he could do the Kirby stuff. He had his own stuff. And apparently, my grandfather, and this was kind of odd also, because my grandfather supported these ambitions. All his other brothers had to go out and work in the fields, and my dad got to stay inside the house and draw, because my grandfather identified his talent. You know, some of us became musicians, some of us became artists.
There's one of those in every family. Like in my family, and I had we had a big family, so I had brothers and sisters. They were all into sports, and well, this was back in those days. So my sisters were like cheerleaders and stuff like that. But just so you know, other people were doing the same thing. They didn't know about small press. They didn't I'll just show you this real quick. Very quickly, because this is your interview. This is an old composition book that I have from the late '60s, and I was doing like monster magazines, magazines back in the day with pencils.
How old were you?
Oh man, like when I did this, gosh, I was probably like, maybe 10 years old or something.
Oh my gosh!
10 or 11. I was copying pictures from famous monsters of Filmland magazine.
Oh my
but we all had the same idea.
Yeah, those of us that do this were kindred spirits, doing the same. My friend Ken Bailey, who we associate with on your program all the time, I was talking to him, and he had basically the same thing, about 15 years before me, and and it's the same sort of thing. But like I'm saying with my dad, he had aspirations to be this, and he had the family support. But
you're lucky you had that kind of familial support. Not everybody gets that. That's really special.
So to me, he had some talent that he's going places. But that kind of came to an end, and I didn't know any of this. I knew my dad drew, and he drew, like I said, all these football players, and he would draw little army soldiers, and, of course, Hercules and Thor and the Submariner and all these other people, right? We see it Marvel, mostly Marvel. But I didn't know that he had aspired to be that until after he had passed away, and my uncle comes up and starts telling a story. Yeah. He comes up and he says, "Oh, I remember the day, your dad had sent off a letter to Marvel and a letter to someplace else, and he received a notice from that basically told him to, saw it off, like, you traced this, you photocopied this and re-inked it. How dare you pull the wool over our eyes?"
Oh no!
And according to my uncle, it messed him up to where he just threw all his stuff. And
that would do it.
The dream was shattered. Now, I didn't know any of this, and I just find it ironic. All my life as a teacher, I've always tried to encourage everybody.
Yes.
You want to go out and be an athlete, you go out and be the best one you can.
You do it,
go out and draw, I'm going to help you do it. But to find out after the fact that my father had these aspirations, we can't have regrets about regrettable things, because had he gone and be here, the history would have taken a different thing. But what has to happen is I kind of realized, I was angry for a bit, but then I was like, you know what, there's no revenge or vengeance here. It needs to be justice. The world has to be corrected. So,
this is your dad right here, isn't it?
My dad right there.
Oh my gosh, okay.
the first issue of
Okay, I didn't remember that was in there.
I just happened to come across it.
Yeah, you
looking
did,
through these great
Let's see
books,
that.
you know. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so, so his dream sort of ended, and I had always wondered about that because as I continued doing this, I had this room right here was an extra bedroom that for the longest time was an unfinished room. You know how my father bought this house when it was kind of a hovel when he first started working, and then he built it up into a much grander house. He ended up working in the oil company. So after that, he just didn't do anything with the art, anything official. And so he went into the petrochemical industry. He worked for ExxonMobil. And instead of most of the other people that went into petrochemicals bought fancy houses and all, they said, no, I'm going to buy a small house and sort of build it up. And then eventually he lived out what he wanted to do because he built a house at the ranch over there. And then he kind of passed this one on, kind of like an empire building thing. And so I would, in this room, sitting over there in an old desk, one of those old school desks with a little inkwell and everything, because my grandfather was a custodian and he saved the best looking one and we had it there. I would draw and he would come and he would pass by and he would look and they never really stopped. And I would show him the stuff that I was doing and he never kind of showed
Never said anything?
interest. Well, he showed kind of interest. He was kind of interested in it, but all that became I always thought that he was like too busy to deal with it, or he was more interested in doing something else. But the contextualization of that entire thing, the context had completely changed when I found out this story. I mean, he wanted to do this. Somebody sent him this letter. Yeah, he just threw all his stuff, and from one day to the next, he was working out there in the fields with us, and it embittered him too.
Yeah, too bad.
So when I was doing it, he was encouraging, but he kept some distance from it.
But nonetheless, he was still a very definite influence on you. And perhaps you might not be doing what you're doing now if it's not for him.
Yeah.
My brother also does some artwork based on that.
Yeah.
My father got sick. My brother went to but my father was already deteriorating from the cancers that were destroying him, and so he didn't get to. But I did manage to find some of that, and in the 10th issue of this series that I'm doing now, the Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty, I'm going to focus the People's Journal on those drawings. I've put many of them in there because I promised myself when I get to 10 issues, that 10th issue is gonna be the one, because that'll be like a bit of a milestone, and we'll go into that. But that was just something that's what triggered this. That happened. I found out about that, and then I said, you know what? This needs to be corrected. I have the same name as my father, basically, and if I'm not going to make it big. I know that. I mean, but I'm going to make it.
You can make it small press.
It's going to happen. There is a.
All right, Steve got to ask you another question.
All right.
We got to move on a little bit.
Well, I mean, we're talking about his beginnings and everything, so we were talking about his influences, and his dad is an influence.
Right.
You know, the thing is, I wrote all this stuff down, but I didn't organize it, so it's all haphazard. It's all over the place.
All right.
It's okay, because I know the story.
Yeah.
But Larned, in fact, this is one of Larned's questions. Were you influenced? What other cartoonists, what other artists influenced your work? Larned mentions he was influenced by Wally Wood and Will Elder.
Yeah, Will Elder and Wally Wood from Mad Magazine.
Well, you mentioned Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Those are those same influences.
He mentioned Mad, and I perked right up because that's what I.
Oh yes, in the 80s.
Yep.
We would go
mine was before that, but
I had some of those too. Some of the older ones. I had one that had The Godfather in it, and so that one was obviously and they were all yellow. Of course, I wasn't an historian then, so I didn't preserve as I should have. Those things should be well preserved now, but they aren't.
So what was your actual cartoonist? Not your, I know your dad, but after that, who did you pattern yourself after?
I really liked the work that Jack Kirby did with his the way like that,
I hate to say this. I never heard of Jack Kirby when I had no idea who Jack Kirby was.
He was my hero.
I know. I had no clue.
Absolutely.
I had no idea.
Incorporate the Kirby crackle into some of the news stories and with little dots and I say, my dad used to do that also, but in terms, so Jack Kirby was one of the mainline comic books, but most of the Mad Magazine artists like Al Jaffe, he would do those snappy answers to stupid questions.
Yeah.
And I got to do this. This is going to turn me into some kind of schlemiel or something, but I'm going to learn how to do that.
Okay, so that's
dialogue.
Okay.
Then, of course, the Mort Drucker film parodies. I never saw a lot of. I didn't see any of the films that would come out in the magazines until after. So I remember specifically An Officer and a Gentleman, and I read the Mad Magazine version, and it's parody and it's making fun of it. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, why am I even watching this? I've already seen this.
Yeah.
I know that that Louis Gossett Jr. and Richard Gere and all this. This is and so a lot of that. Of course, Sergio Aragonés is another.
Oh my gosh, he's a god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of these people had amazing longevity. Also, I think we just.
He's still around. He's still drawing.
And so I saw a lot of those things, but I wasn't really actively looking for comic book influences until maybe like the last 5 years. So I know Dan DeCarlo is another one that because I used to have the old Archie's digests and comic books, and so you see a lot of that in probably. I love
the old Archie comic, the old Archie comics.
Yes,
they totally blew it later, but.
Are reminiscent of it, but the ones that were probably from the 60s and 70s and the early 80s, and then of course I'd go down to the HEB, which is our grocery store, and I pick up some of them, and I got them somewhere here. Yeah. But I kind of like looked at that as a bit of an influence. But as I said, the influences that are having the most effect right now are the small press guys. I'm forever grateful, Steve, that you allowed me to join the UFO, because I have an absolute honor to have you on board. Seriously, I appreciate that. I have gained such a insight into so many things. I mean, just in reviewing, and I sent you a very lengthy, maybe a lot of series of reviews over some of the stuff. But there's such a variety, diversity of creators and people doing all kinds of stuff, action. There's surrealism. That's what's so great about small press. It's not just superheroes. It can be slice of life. It can be all kinds of stuff. And that's what I like about it. There's a lot. I was going to ask. Go ahead. I was going to ask him.
Sometimes we talk over each other.
Yeah.
And I just go over them.
Yeah, and I just dominate.
Yeah.
I gotta ask this. This is I gotta know the answer to this. How did you come up with the idea of two girls who work in a mailroom and become superheroes? I gotta know how you come up with that.
Well, it's actually more true to life than you would think.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So everything you see in the comic book is a weird distortion of reality. Of something that has occurred in my life that I'm just exaggerating to a huge point. None of the characters are actually based on anybody real. They're based on like amalgamations of different people, things that have happened. So what happens is I worked at a middle school for 17 years, and for most of that time it didn't have a school paper. And then one day a kid in class asked, "Sir, can we have a school newspaper?" And I said, "All right, I'll back that. If you guys write stories and do all this other stuff, if I have to write it all by myself, if you guys are going to contribute to it, I'm more than happy to be the sponsor. I'll stay after school in the computer lab with you guys. You can turn in your stories, and that was the time of floppy disks and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And we've updated technologies twice since then. And so they said, sure, we want to do this. And so, what do you want to call it? Now, let's call it the daily Brema. And I was like, stop, daily. Daily,
please. Yeah.
Are you cracked? Are you mad?
Yeah.
And so I go, it's going to be called the Weekly Brema, and we're going to have the whole week, and there's like football games to cover and all that stuff. And so that went for a while, and it was news and stuff, and the kids really liked it. They liked seeing their names in the newspaper and all that. And then one of them said, "Sir, can we have political cartoons in it?" And I was like, "Oh my God, political cartoons!" We got the 2016 election coming up here. And, got Donald Trump and all this other stuff. Y'all want to make political cartoons? They're trying to get me fired? And so I say, you know what? Go ahead and try it. The First Amendment is the cornerstone of my understanding. So they did, and they brought me some comics, but they weren't really comics. They just went and got some internet clip art and added some words to it. Very similar to that one piece that y'all reviewed where they took the 1930s comic and changed the captions.
Yeah, that detective comic. Yeah.
With all kinds of stuff. And I was like, guys, you can't really do this. Is like copyright issues.
Copyright, yeah.
I tell you what, you bring me one of these and I'll draw up something. And so they had actually gone to... And they went to a Yiddish language newspaper and found a picture of the gossiping Yenta. And they wanted to use that for the gossip columnist. And they were going to have her say something, and I go, no, you can't do that. That's obviously for whatever newspaper this is. Let me draw you a version of that. And that became the Lola character. And so then everybody, the person doing the gossip column, kind of took that as their mantle. And then somebody was doing the sports wanted to have their own character, and somebody doing the news wanted to have their own. So now we had every page of the paper had its own mascot, because they didn't want to use their real names. So they created Pegs Knows a Lot and Dr. Lola and all this stuff. And so it's coming along great, right? And then some kids come up to me in the cafeteria. I'm trying to get my plate. I'm trying to get out of there, trying to go eat. I got 30 minutes to eat. What are these kids thinking? And they come, "Sir, can we have some story comic books in the newspaper?" And I go, "Story comic books?" Yeah, like we read in, get this, in English class how when Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, he published it a chapter at a time in a journal or something.
This is true.
And people went through there and they, they would, it was like a weekly thing. You could do a different scene. And I was all like, I'm trying to eat here. There's not enough time in the day for this kind of stuff. So I went home and I started thinking about it. Let's try it out. So we started making more. The political cartoons began to be 3-panelers, and then they said, "Well, sir, let's do some superheroes. No, let's do spies. No, let's do army kind of stuff." And I'm like, okay, well, so I drew a picture of. I go, well, boys have been done to death. You got the Katzenjammer kids and the Hardy Boys and all that. Let's do something different. Let's do girls. So I drew a picture of 2 girls, kind of on the board, and they had that. What do you call it? The only hairstyle I knew how to really draw was that Hillary Clinton one when she had the bangs and had the. And so I drew these 2 girls that had this hairstyle, bangs in the front, kind of shoulder length with a headband on the top, and they were all, "Sir, nobody dresses like that." And I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do? So we got the yearbook. And 2 of the girls that worked on the staff there, "So why don't you use my haircut?" And then so it was a girl with a haircut where kind of one dangled over one eye all the time. And then the other one had a haircut with a ponytail, like a front ponytail, kind of parted on this side and it came into a ponytail. And I go, all right, so this was on dry erase marker, so I erased the hairstyles and I kind of put that in there.
But you were... Okay, but you're a huge influence on these kids. You're bringing them into the worlds of comics. But I gather at some point you must have taken over more and more and did your own comics, because it wasn't just them. You were doing comics too.
Well, what happens is, the Weekly Brema had my page and a half, and then it had all their comics. And so I was just doing it to show them how it was done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did the first one, and it was a comic book about the two girls, and it was not really a narrative. It was kind of like a one-pager, where they're there fighting this gigantic robot, and the robot's destroying the place and pummeling them, and they're running around, and one of them runs and trips over a cable and it's the cable to the robot, and the robot falls, right, and they take the scientist who made it away, and it's over. And I'm adapting that into one of those Hostess style cartoons, by the way.
But was that the beginning of Marie Selinsky and the Wonder Kitty? Is that where it began?
That was the beginning?
It was called Mighty Courageous and the Wonder Kitty. They like the sound of Wonder Kitty. They want to call it Wonder Cat, but I'm sure there was already something like that.
Yeah.
The Wonder Kitty sounded good, but the first part of it...
When did you decide to make it your own comic book completely?
Well, immediately after that, because what happens is that story ran, right? And 5 different occasions that week, including the principal, they said, "Who the heck are these characters?" Started the story in the middle of it. Who are they? What's their story?
Yeah.
And I was all like, now I gotta do
better
something.
come up with one, huh?
You know what? They wanted a story, narrative, so a serial. So we'll start with this. We'll start, and there'll be kids. At first, it was contemporary. It was taking place at that time, and they were 20-year-old girls because I didn't want to be drawing, little kids. It wasn't, and it wouldn't make sense to have middle school kids working at a newspaper.
No.
So I aged up the characters and I aged up all the rest of the staff. So all those mascots became like and you can see it in the origin stories. They became the staff of the paper.
Got it right here.
Yeah,
this is the first issue.
There's a scene in there where they're all sitting at a table. And all those, one of them is the news person. There was a financial news editor. There was a weather person. And so all those people, I got rid of the original names they had, and I gave them more believable names. If Emmett Nesbitt is a believable name, or Peggy O'Shea, and all this other stuff. So I updated those people and said, what is these girls' story? So I said, you know what? If these girls are this age, that means that when they started getting into this work, it was during the Great Recession. They're probably having trouble getting jobs, and so it became that. And they want to be journalists, because the whole idea of this is journalism. So they want to be journalists, but life isn't working out in their favor, and so they end up working as car hops, and they throw stuff all over the one person, and she gets a job. And
well, I see here they're getting fired. This is the first issue. You're fired. They couldn't keep a steady job.
Originally, that was a 3-page spread, because that was an entire. I condensed it down.
I'm still fascinated on how you got it into the comic book. Then, how did you know what to do? Did you talk to people to figure out how to put a comic book together and who to have print it and all that?
Whenever I encounter a student, because we do draw notes, like today we did like agriculture and industry, and I went up there and drew like a barn for industry, and and they said, "Mr. I can't draw." My response to that is, do it anyway. And so I didn't know how to make a comic book. I didn't know the first anybody. They told me about Yeet, and I submitted it to Yeet. I had to condense it down. That's why I'm reworking the origin story, by the way. I'm reestablishing all the stuff I kind of threw out of it to make it a more full-length story by my standards. And then I say, you know what, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I went up there and I looked into it, the comic, Wellspring, Gecko Publishing, and all that. I figured out what you had to do. I had limited resources. I have a very old Photoshop.
Comics Wellspring here.
I have a very old Photoshop, and I have Microsoft Publisher. And so that's why my lettering is limited, because the text boxes that I'm using are the ones that are embedded in Microsoft Publisher. What I need to do, and people are trying to show me new stuff, but it'd be too jarring to just switch over right away. I got to wait to the beginning of a story arc to change the style of it. I can't change it in the middle, because then it isn't consistent. So you draw them by hand. Then you scan them into a computer, is that right? I'd like to say that I scanned them. I know that I have a scanner, but I used to take a picture of the line art with my phone. Oh my gosh, no kidding. And then I bring it over. That's what I like to find out. You did it with your phone. Yeah, I bring it over to
That's amazing.
Photoshop, and I messed with the contrast and the resolution, not the resolution, the contrast and the what's the other thing? The brightness and all that until the lines get where I need them to be. Then I animate them, color them, add other stuff. And I should also point out that a lot of them are done in elements. So it's like animation. There's a background and then like color forms.
Oh, there's layers. It's layered, right?
It's layered. And you can kind of manipulate them to a certain degree. That way, because I had drawn this really elaborate scene, and then somebody around here knocked over my an ink well that I had.
Oh, who could have done that?
Like for hours down the drain. And I had drawn all the people and everything, and it was so beautiful. I said, you know what, we're not going to do that. If we're going to lose something, we're going to lose percentages of it, not the whole thing. So that's kind of where that ended up. And so I just decided, you know what, this has to be done. You know, my father had this. I'm going to continue it. I'm going to take up where he left off, and there will be at least one Joe Carrales out there who did this, and he rides with me. And I was fortunate enough, music-wise, to have played music with him and my grandfather and so forth. But I wasn't made privy to that artistic section of his life. And like I said, if he were around now, he would be here probably doing that, because I figured out how to do this. I can imagine myself going over to the ranch where he's at, you know, in spirit, where he would be in person, and saying, look what we can do. And put this stuff together.
You've carried on a part of his legacy. You've taken your part of his legacy, because you've taken on the artistic aspect and you've carried it further than he did. I did want to say that I was looking at this one, and it looks very simple. This was issue number 1, but by issue number 3, your artwork was getting more complicated. And there was a lot more background, a lot more detail. And some of this stuff is really beautiful, especially in full color.
Now remember that that initial one began some of the art is still the 2016 art that ran in that school paper.
Oh my gosh! No.
Somebody said, "Well, Mike Jones will publish this in Yeet." Yeah. And I go, "Well, but it's considerably lengthy." They said, "Well, when you get it down." So there wasn't any time. It was like the deadline. It's December. I want this out in February. The deadline is like December 17th. So there I'm consolidating stuff, moving stuff around. There's no time to clean up any of the images. So some of the stuff is kind of rougher than it ought to be. Some of it's like 5 or 6 years old, and it's not matching stylistically with the other stuff that I learned how to do. Yeah. And so that's why, like I said, I'm going back now and redoing. I'm going to redo the kind of director's cut, but I'm going to release the first 3 as the first 4 that didn't see UFOs.
Now, how did you meet Ken Bailey? Because, in my opinion, your style and Ken Bailey's style are very close.
They're very similar.
Very, very similar. How did that all work out? That's interesting.
That is an interesting point. Because I was talking before we came on, Larned and I, Steve, about how exactly did I learn? How exactly did I meet you guys? Because y'all always reach the point where you're coming out in my publications as
right.
and it's just sort of a thing that comes on. Now, when I decided that when I discovered small press comics, let me backtrack a bit there, because I was all like, okay, my dad did this. I haven't bought comic books in the longest time. I'm gonna go see what Marvel and DC has. But before I went to the comic book stores around here, because I wanted the physical feel, I didn't want to wait, for subscriptions and whatnot. I didn't even know how it works these days. Right. I said, let me look online and see what's available. Well, I found several people. I found Fish Lee, who does Life in the Green Zone. I found all these other people that were publishing things. That's where that Torch stuff, the Dolphin Brothers and all that, I saw that stuff online, and I saw some of the stuff that the UFO people were putting out, and I was like, oh my God, there is a literal treasure trove of stuff going on here.
I have to keep adjusting this light. It's just not right. Yeah, there you go. And I looked radioactive before. That's a little better.
But like the Phantom of the Opera.
I know.
So one of the characters that I ran into was the Mighty Energy Girl. And I saw pictures of it, and I was all like, oh, that's an interesting style. and then I started kind of like reading up about it, and then like so many things, I just sent him a message. Said, hey, I really enjoy the comic samples that you have. I went and found him on Facebook, started communicating with him, discovered that we had like some kindred associations, and one day I decided to draw a picture of Marty and Nico with the Mighty Energy Girl, and I sent it to him, and then he reciprocated, and then I said, you know what, we ought to collaborate on something. And so I said, you know what, why don't we do the Mighty Energy Girl meets Marty Talinsky and the Wonder Kitty, now called Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty. I said, how's it gonna? So we would talk every night, you know, brainstorming. Okay, well, how would they meet? Are they in the same universe? Are they gonna have to come through like a portal and all this stuff? I said, no, let's just make it simple. They exist in the same world. The only thing is the time displaced them. This is happening in 2011 or 2010, 2009, that whole era. So he had to like go back to the previous, to what Energy Girl's design was in those days. So I wrote a 10-page, or wrote and drew a 10-page story of Marty and Nico have just finished the...
But did he change his drawing style to kind of look like, or was he always...
No,
this is what I can't figure out. His drawing style and your drawing style are very similar.
That is...
It's just an accident?
Yeah, that's...
That didn't change, nobody changed anything to match the other guy.
In fact,
that is amazing to me.
What happens is, like for example, if I draw the Mighty Energy Girl, I look at his style, but I draw her to fit.
You don't have to change much.
And when he draws Mighty and Nico, do I have?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the same feel to it already.
Yeah, you fit. Your art styles fit together very well.
Yeah.
I better not. I had a copy of. He sent me the concept of.
Excuse me.
Cat to the Future, but he draws. He goes out of his way to make them look both like his style with his features and mine, and I try to do the same. And so the melding of it, the universes, well, they were similar. And they've meshed really well. So
they're not kidding. Yeah.
Story. I said, okay,
I find that fascinating.
let's work in the same lore. So the Mighty Energy and all her people exist in my universe, and my people exist in yours. And all we have to do is collaborate and talk about this, because you know, if you can borrow. He is carte blanche to open to a story of these girls anytime. But work with each other. And he said, well, you know, he can't go and kill them, for example, or he can't alter them unless we talk about it. And I wouldn't, and the same thing. I borrowed some characters, and
I can understand that. Yeah.
And I run it by him. I go, this is what I'd like this character to do. If it's outside, I go, don't be coy. If it's outside of what they would do, tell me. I'll change it, because I want this to work. In other words,
perfect. It's a perfect collaboration.
I mean,
merging
you can't
of styles.
beat it.
I mean,
you can't beat it. I mean, I don't know how that happened. It's just amazing to me that you both draw similar style. And not exactly, but similar.
He really gets the character of them. He really gets the physical appearances and also their behaviors. Yeah. And I said, well, the whole idea of Cat's Meow and then Cat to the Future, which is it's a 3-part arc that takes place in his universe, is, and this goes back to what y'all sometimes say when you're reviewing mine. These girls don't know what they're doing. They're supposed to be superheroes. They don't know what
they haven't done any superhero stuff yet.
It's wacky because, you know, they're young, they're working in a mailroom, they're in the Air Force, they're officers in the Air Force, and they're budding superheroes, and they haven't really explored the extent of their characters, of their powers just yet. But that's the thing, is that you're not getting in a hurry to tell the story. You're telling it one step at a time.
They're going to get there, and I'm glad Kent came aboard with that also, because the story arc of the heist, they don't do well there as superheroes. They're on the run. Right. They're having a horrible time of it. And then, so they know that, and even their commander, everybody knows they don't know what they're doing. And then when they're over in the Air Force, having to do Air Force stuff, you can't fake that.
That makes it real. That makes it real, though.
So they've been given commissions as captains in the Air Force, and captains are it takes like 5 or 6 years to even approach becoming a captain after officers training and all this. These girls, you're thrown in here. You're in the Air Force. So they don't know what they're doing. They're supposed to be journalists, and they're journalists, but they're working in the mailroom. And don't like them. They're like, who are these people? Why are they here?
And they've been through a lot in a short period of time. They've been through an inquisition where they were being accused of crimes they didn't commit.
Yeah, they went to a European adventure where they ended up reporting all these stories that people were upset about. So they're not making. And so Cannon was like, you know what? That's the end. The Mighty Energy Girl is, and her Mary Oldsmobile character agent, and her organization, the Federal Department of Superhumanics. They're the first people to train these girls. So the Air Force will throw up their hands, and General Carrales will say, you know what? This is beyond my mark here. I'm going to there to a camp. And they go over there and they create even more havoc. I don't know, these girls seem to fall into all these situations. They don't ask for anything. They've asked for none of this. But
General Carrales, you have a lot of vivid characters in there, and you got the British guy, Percival, and he has kind of a crush on Marie, right?
Oh yeah.
But she kind of puts him off. But I'm just kind of, I don't know, the soap opera aspect is kind of intriguing. I want to see where this is going to go, But
that also references my father and myself, because my father and my mother didn't like each other when they met. And then when my wife and I met, I had to ask her out 10 times before she finally said yes.
Oh, yeah.
You wash your hair. And so I said, let's explore some of that. Let's put some of that, because you often see these days characters meet and they fall in love instantly. Let's have some sort of tension. Zelensky is the sassy one. And this Percival guy is the epitome of arrogance when he begins. But the thing is, neither of them are actually like that. Those are kind of facades that they've developed around themselves. It's like Nico isn't really the spaz that you think it is. There's gonna be some story arcs where you're gonna see why she's the way she is, and they're gonna grow. They're not gonna.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because we got to get to the point here where we're going to have to wrap it up, because people tell us we go too long. So I'm going to ask you one more thing, unless you got one more. You got one more thing, Steve? Go ahead, because I don't.
No, I think we can go a little bit longer though. Let's say 10 more minutes.
And the question was just, what are your plans for the future? Do you plan to continue just the girls? Do you plan anything different? Those kind of questions.
There is a bunch of stuff that I have planned, and I was talking with some of my other creators, like Ken, Ryan Howitt, and Trish, and all those from Canada, and Don Simpson. I got like all these ideas. I want to go back and.
Don Simpson, I just want to give him a shout out.
Yeah.
Awesome cover.
Look at that cover.
I love Don Simpson.
There's 2 more covers coming.
Two more covers coming.
Back there. We can. Y'all wanted to know about that. I'll explain that. But
just generally, what your plans are.
I've got 5 incarnations of stories that I want to do. I want to go back and tell the backstory, because this stuff happened in the 80s. Yeah. I want to go back and tell those stories. Okay. I want to continue the current storyline until they reach a point where it's no longer as it is, where they evolve. Then I'm going to switch over to it being more about them in a kind of total superhero context. And then I have this far distant story that's a space adventure that continues it on even further. Now that the girls, when they become old
astronauts,
and they become astronauts, and I take it, into like the 2060s. So that's that stuff. But I also want to publish other people's stuff. My friend Brian Amstetter, he has that Cheap Coffee Cup. He does online comics. I'd like to compile his book, print a few of them, get him started on that, show how to do it, and then let it take off. I want to do that sort of thing. I also want to, throw some one-shots out there. I want to do more Yeats Presents stuff. I want to publish in Tetragrammaton Fragments, comic, not only the reviews, but kind of go in there. I want to...
We could use more comics in there.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
And what I want to know in terms of that is, if I put comics in there, do they need to be exclusive, or like previews that can be run as a full story later? Or maybe
you can do whatever you want. You can publish it there and then reprint it in your own wherever you like.
I got to figure out in my own mind how I want to go with it.
It used to be a newsletter. It used to just be a lot of type, and there was in the beginning there was no illustrations. There was nothing back in the 1970s, in the early 70s. Started adding art. Columns started getting longer and more complicated. Sometimes people put articles in. Sometimes people started adding comics, and it just makes for a more balanced issue. It's cool to have some more artwork and more comics. So.
I kind of see it as like a trade journal of sorts, where people can share their ideas, review, the membership.
Yeah, it's more than just a newsletter. It began as a newsletter 50-some years ago, but now it's a small press book in its own right.
There you
go. I got a few of those too, like several hundred.
Yeah. You said something that caught my ear.
Go ahead.
You wanna publish comics? Because I am terrible. I can draw the comics, I can draw the story, but actually putting them together and getting them to the printer and all that, I'm terrible at.
I want to do that because there's
would do that if I sent you work. You would put it together.
I could put it together for you. It would take some time. We do it over time and fix it the way because I like with some of the stuff that I've been putting in the New People's Journal. I'll send the interviews and go, do you like the way this looks? If you don't like it, tell me, and you're the boss. Mm-hmm. You've done the honor of allowing the interview. Do you like the way it's formatted? Do you want to put another image in here? Does this need to be moved? Would you like it framed a certain way? And so I'm kind of meticulous with that because the customer is always right. And if I'm going to say, I'm going to make a comic, I'm not going to be like, oh no, you ought to do this here. No, this is if I would suggest you do this, because it's kind of unbalanced with this other page or whatever. But if you're unsatisfied with it, I'm unsatisfied with it, and I want to kind of do that. We can try some of it.
Okay. I don't have anything right away, but I will.
If you want to with some stuff in the New People's Journal, like 1 or 2 pages, I can throw some in there. We can see how it would lay the tracks to run the trains that my railroad friend from Wisconsin.
Okay.
Essentially, this was your first small press comic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your first actual
pretty good for the first one.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I didn't have very many people guiding me with that, though.
Yeah.
I just kind of had to go online and try to throw it. So you'll notice if you open it's very panel based. There aren't any splash pages or anything in there. Mostly because it came out of the newspaper. Where the newspaper, I don't have one here handy, but it's landscape. So it runs. So to translate that into
the closest to a splash panel we have here.
That's just you should see the new one that I've redone that where they're airplane and they're at an airport and all that, and it is a legitimate full. There's no margin along the edge. So yeah, I've picked up some of these tricks from the UFO guys and from various other artists that are out there.
Yeah, there's some brilliant people out there, like John Muller, for instance, Larry Johnson. There's some people with all kinds of advice.
By the way, I don't know if he wants me to say this, but that new Origins issue is getting a new cover by John Muller.
You can't go wrong there, I'll tell you that. John is great.
It's going to be kind of hush because, like I said, it's going to take time because
John Muller right there. Look how good this guy is.
Look at that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking my time on redoing that one because it's happening along with writing the article review for TF, going through and getting the next issue out. Actually, I'm having to re-inventory. Of the 7 issues I have out, I'm almost out of number 5, so time to hit over there. And I've got it kind of economically where one book pays for the other with a tiny bit of and then you roll that little profit out this way, and then I use that profit to reinvest into other books. We might come up with an annual. Isn't that cool? An annual. Stuff like annual.
It's amazing how much you get done, because I know you have a full-time job, and you're doing all this, and it seems like you're constantly doing something. You have so much enthusiasm. Even the article, like you sent me this article for Tetragrammaton Fragments, and it was so long you had to resend it in a different format, but you have all that enthusiasm, all that energy, and that's amazing. Wait till you get as old as Larned and I. You won't have that.
You won't have that energy.
It's all part.
Yeah, you will. I hope so.
Out of the process, my friend. The process is front load. So Druid 2 is already there. Druid 3 is almost finished. After that is a collaboration with Ryan Howlett with his Badger character. That one is storyboarded. I've got Candidate Calamity running in the Eats. That's going to be expanded into a full-size one. So this stuff exists already, and so I have like 3 months between issues. 90 to 100% of the issues already done. I can just I did this. One of the questions that y'all had asked off screen was, how did the pandemic affect you? And the pandemic did a lot. First of all, when I was teaching from home, and that was for like a semester, and I'd never done that, and so I was like doing live TV every day. And then since none of the stuff existed online, I had to create it all. So I'd get off at the computer at 4:30, and then eat, take a nap, and then start writing the next lesson for the next few days.
Wow.
And then all the way till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, kids would start submitting their work. At 7 o'clock, parents, how come you haven't graded my kid's work? And I'm like, well, I have to sleep sometime, and so I kind of went through that phase. Then we had the split phase where I was doing live TV from the classroom with half the kids there and half of them at home. Then I got the plague. And I thought I literally, the way that it was hyped up at the time, I called my mother crying. I go, I'm going to die. This is it. People are dying all over the country. We've lost, family members and stuff here. I love you all and all this. And she was like, no, that's not going to be the way it's going to be. You're going to be fine. You're young. And I go, I'm not young. I used to be young.
Yeah.
So I kind of got over that, and I started drawing. So I'm in there watching old 80s, like Dixon and all this other stuff that's coming through YouTube. Right? I quarantined to where I was just in my room there for like 2 or 3 weeks. I did all this stuff. I started communicating with Haley and all these other people, and when the pandemic ended, that's when I said, you know what? I didn't die. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna live.
Make it through.
I'm on the other side. I survived the plague, and now there's a wolf making me. Hey, 2 horsemen of the apocalypse out of 4 ain't bad. No, but so I said I'm gonna figure out what to do. So I printed. I said I'm gonna take Origins. I did it in Yeats. Let's do it, in our own format. Let's figure out how to do this. Let's go somewhere with this. I want to learn to do the small press the way you guys do, the home version, the kind of like more personalized printing. I want to make some of those, but I'm gonna need to ask, how do you staple it?
Now you got to get a big long stapler.
Well, my copy just exploded.
You got to have a big long one.
Like where do I get that sort of stuff? And that's just a matter of doing it, because I don't want to send. The Comic Wellsprings is in Michigan, so I got a pack of comics, a load of number 7 coming in, and it's supposed to arrive on my porch sometime, but it takes weeks to get there, and then I got to mail it off to people, and so that takes a bit more time. And so I like to have a few things that are like self-made or locally made, so that I can make some more I can produce more content. Yeah,
digest size, nice digest size comics. They're not hard to do.
We got an outfit like comics. We got an outfit like that in Orlando too. It's like right downtown Orlando. It's not that far from here, but I haven't been down. I can't think of the name of it right now for some reason. But I did use them one time when I did the reprint of album number 1, that 50-year-old zine that I published 50 years ago. Well, it wasn't 50 years ago. It's 50 years old now, but it wasn't then.
Well, see, like, this is really home. This is proof of concept for Cat to the Future, which is the second part of it. And he, binds it up and all this. But I think he goes to Kinko's or someplace like that, and that tends to be on the expensive. One of the things I want to also figure out
is Kinko. This is Kinko's right here.
Is it expensive? It looks like it may be.
It could be. But when you add the color covers and stuff, it could be. Yeah. But I do some of it on my home copier, my home printer here. But wait a minute, it just came back on. It was dead. That's
not
weird.
dead anymore, huh? Came back to life.
What is a light on? I thought this thing was completely dead, but now there's a light on. That's weird.
The next thing, the next light fire, and the next thing will be smoke.
And I do some of it at home, and I do some of it at Kinko's.
I know you have to work in the morning, Joe. So we better kind of wrap things up, don't you think?
Yeah, I want to finish up with one small question, and then we'll play to the conclusion. Any last words?
You have a last word there, Steve, for Joe?
Now, it says
I think he covered what I did.
You asked had he ever been in the Civil Air Patrol?
Oh yeah. In fact, I've been in the Civil Air Patrol since 1999. I
thought so. I just guessed. Yeah.
Were any of you guys ever in it as cadets? Or?
No.
Not I.
No.
Yeah, we just
I was in the Army, the real Army, but not the Civil Air Patrol.
Well, let me tell you something.
I was in college.
I had to cut my hair today because we started some cadets at the school where I work at, and so I'm outfitting them with uniforms. They're all excited about it.
Oh my.
Here's the thing that I want to end on with this, because a lot of people send me messages. I got uniform people who are sticklers. Oh, your uniforms are pretty good, but this ribbon is not appropriate. And I was like, well, yeah, because your
details.
Look very World War II, and it's fictional.
I made it up.
An Air Force. Civil Air Patrol is the Air Force Auxiliary, and Lion Squad is an Air Force Auxiliary. So they're not technically in the mainline Air Force, but they kind of are. But they're operating in their own area. So people that the Air Force would never do that. Fictional.
Picky.
Lion Squad and the Lion Squad's made up of two things. It's made up of the Skywatch, and it's made up of the squadron, the Wrangler Squadron, which is the flying part. And then Marty and Nico are their own department. They're superheroes that are attached to this. That operates more like the Civil Air Patrol than like the Air Force. And so Air Force people say, well, the Air Force would never do this. And I go, yeah, but the Civil Air Patrol does something similar. And characters that you meet in the, quote, Air Force and military that Marty and Nico meet are based on archetypal people that I have met over the past 25 years.
Oh, my God.
So the General Morelli character, there was a guy like that.
Oh.
The way that the girls have to kind of like come into their own and knowing all this drilling ceremony and whatever, there were people like that. Pilots that would suddenly be brevetted to captain, and they know nothing of the Civil Air Patrol, but because they have the pilot's rating. And you can always tell, I always say, by reading the ribbons on the chest. So I got a stack of ribbons because I've done it from the beginning. And so I got all this stuff. A new pilot that gets promoted to like captain has no ribbon, or he'll have like prior service ribbons, because you can wear your Army or Navy prior service ribbons on your Civil Air Patrol uniform. So Marty and Nico are coming into that sort of thing. So it's not really like the Air Force. It's more like the CAP. Civil Air Patrol people are like, oh, yeah, I know that. That's a stand eval officer from. That's how they operate it. This is how this works. And I go, yeah, it's fictional. It's a fictional. It's what Civil Air Patrol people that I know want Civil Air Patrol to be like. They want to have Thunderbolt, advanced technology. They want to have the funds to do all this stuff, which in the Civil Air Patrol, ever since World War II, we've been kind of winging it. We've been, you know, it started out to fight Nazi subs with people flying their own planes. And it eventually, as the Cold War and everything, it became more of an institution of let's do some stuff continental U.S. that the Air Force can't. But we're always kind of doing the mostest with the leastest, and people are really good at it. And so you're going to see some of that in how that operates. And so yeah, I figured y'all wanted to get that question in before you.
Yeah, I did because I thought from the beginning I thought the girls were in the Civil Air Patrol.
They kind of are there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Anyway, we really appreciate you coming on. Great guests.
Very much enjoyed this.
Really enjoyed it. We don't have to, prod you to do a little more answer. You're great. You did a great job, and I hope everybody enjoys it. I know we had fun doing it, and I hope you had a good time. So,
all right, y'all have a good one.
We will be talking to you. All right, we'll see you, folks. We're going to end it right now. And I wanted to do one more thing. I want to give a shout out to Rick Therrio. He has a character called the Old Fat Detective, and he has made a movie. It's quite something to see. You've got to see this. It's called The Man Without a Fortune. And the Old Fat Detective is the star. And this is on Vimeo, so I will put a link down below so you can get there. But it's really worth a watch. In fact, I had to watch it twice just to catch everything that's in it. So if you get a chance, take a look at Rick Therrio's Old Fat Detective, The Man Without a Fortune. And I think you will really get a kick out of it.